Elena Rodriguez stepped off the military transport ship onto the dock of Naval Base Charleston. The salty ocean breeze caught her dark hair as she adjusted the strap of her medical bag. After 3 years serving as a field medic in overseas conflicts, she was finally coming home. But home felt different now. Everything looked smaller, quieter, safer than the war zones she had grown accustomed to. The base was buzzing with activity. Sailors in crisp white uniforms hurried past her, some heading to ships, others returning from long deployments. Elena watched them with a mixture of nostalgia and unease. She had once been like them, eager and hopeful about her military career. That was before the explosion that changed everything. Captain Sarah Mitchell, Elena's former training partner, appeared through the crowd. Her face lit up when she spotted Elena, and she rushed over to embrace her friend. "Elena, you're finally back. I can't believe it's been 3 years since I last saw you." Elena forced a smile as she hugged Sarah back, being careful not to wince when Sarah's arms pressed against her ribs. "It's good to see you too, Sarah. You look well. I heard you got promoted to captain." "Yes, just last month. But enough about me. How are you holding up?" "I heard what happened in Afghanistan. That must have been terrifying." Sarah's expression grew serious as she studied Elena's face. Elena looked away, focusing on the ships in the harbor. "I'm fine now. The doctors cleared me for light duty. That's why I'm here for the medical review board." "Light duty?" "Elena, you were one of the best combat medics in our unit. What exactly happened over there?" Sarah's voice carried genuine concern. Before Elena could respond, a commotion near the main administrative building caught their attention. A group of officers was gathering around a tall figure in dress uniform. Even from a distance, Elena could see the numerous ribbons and medals adorning his chest. His posture commanded respect, and the way other officers deferred to him suggested high rank. "Who's that?" Elena asked, grateful for the distraction from Sarah's probing questions. Sarah followed her gaze, and her expression shifted to one of admiration mixed with nervousness. "That's Admiral James Harrison. He just took command of the base last month. They say he's brilliant but tough as nails. He served in the Gulf War, Iraq, and Afghanistan." Elena studied the Admiral from across the courtyard. He appeared to be in his mid-40s, with graying temples and intense blue eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. There was something about his bearing that reminded her of the career officers she had served under overseas. Men and women who had seen combat and carried its weight with quiet dignity. "He's also single," Sarah added with a knowing smile. "Half the female officers on base have tried to catch his attention, but he keeps to himself mostly. Very professional. Very focused on his work. I'm not interested in romance, Sarah. I'm just here to get through the medical board and figure out what's next for my career." Elena's voice carried a finality that made Sarah raise her eyebrows. They made their way to the medical facility where Elena would be staying during her evaluation period. The building was modern and clean, a stark contrast to the field hospitals she had worked in overseas. As they walked through the corridors, Elena noticed how the fluorescent lights reflected off the polished floors. Everything here was orderly, peaceful, safe. It should have been comforting, but instead, it made her feel out of place. Dr. Patricia Collins, the chief medical officer, greeted them at the entrance to the medical wing. She was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense manner. "Sergeant Rodriguez, welcome back. I've reviewed your medical files from Germany. How are you feeling physically?" "No. Better each day, ma'am. The physical therapy helped a lot." Elena stood at attention, falling back into military protocol. "Good. We'll start with a full physical examination tomorrow morning, followed by psychological evaluation. The board wants to ensure you're ready for whatever assignment comes next." "Doctor." Collins handed Elena a folder with her schedule. "Your room is on the 3rd floor. Get some rest tonight." As they headed toward the elevator, Elena caught sight of Admiral Harrison entering the building. He moved with purpose, his eyes scanning the area with the practiced awareness of someone who had spent years in dangerous situations. When his gaze briefly met hers, Elena felt an unexpected jolt of recognition. Not that she had seen him before, but there was something in his eyes that she understood. A weight that came from having seen too much. Sarah noticed the exchange and nudged Elena playfully. Interesting. He actually made eye contact. That's more attention than most women get from him. Elena shook her head. You're imagining things. He was probably just wondering why we were standing in the middle of his path. That evening, Elena sat alone in her assigned quarters, staring out the window at the harbor. Ships moved slowly across the water, their lights creating trails in the darkness. She could hear the distant sound of waves against the shore, a rhythm that had once comforted her but now seemed to emphasize how alone she felt. She touched her side gently, feeling the ridged scar tissue beneath her uniform. The explosion had saved her life in a twisted way. If she hadn't been thrown clear by the blast, she would have been in the medical tent when the second bomb went off. 7 people died that day, including 2 patients she had been treating just minutes before. The physical wounds had healed, mostly. The doctors in Germany had done excellent work, repairing the damage to her ribs and internal organs. But the scars remained, a permanent reminder of that day. More troubling were the emotional wounds that no surgeon could repair. The guilt, the nightmares, the way she sometimes froze when she heard unexpected loud noises. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find a young sailor with a message. Sergeant Rodriguez, Admiral Harrison, requests your presence in his office tomorrow at 0800 hours, before your medical evaluation. Elena frowned. Did he say what this was regarding? No, ma'am, just that it was important. After the sailor left, Elena wondered what the Admiral could possibly want with her. They had never met, and she couldn't think of any reason why the base commander would be interested in a combat medic undergoing medical review. She tried to push the meeting from her mind as she prepared for bed, but found herself thinking about those intense blue eyes and the way he had looked at her in the corridor. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by familiar dreams of sand and smoke and the sound of explosions. She woke several times, her hand instinctively going to her ribs, where the scars pulled tight against her skin. By morning, she felt exhausted, despite having spent 8 hours in bed. Elena dressed carefully in her service uniform, making sure every button and crease was perfect. Whatever Admiral Harrison wanted to discuss, she was determined to present herself as a professional soldier, not a broken veteran, struggling to find her place in the world. The Admiral's office was located on the top floor of the administrative building, with windows that offered a commanding view of the entire base. Elena reported to his secretary, a efficient-looking woman who directed her to wait in the outer office. At exactly 0800 hours, the inner office door opened, and Admiral Harrison appeared. Up close, Elena could see the lines around his eyes that spoke of years spent squinting against foreign suns, and the slight scar along his jawline that suggested he had not always been safely behind a desk. Sergeant Rodriguez, thank you for coming. Please, have a seat. His voice was deep and calm, with just a hint of a southern accent. Elena sat in the chair across from his desk, maintaining perfect posture despite the nervous energy coursing through her. Sir, may I ask what this is regarding? Admiral Harrison settled into his chair and opened a thick file that Elena recognized as her service record. I've been reviewing the files of all personnel returning to the base, and yours caught my attention. Your service record is impressive. 3 tours overseas, numerous commendations, recommendations for promotion from every commanding officer you've served under. Thank you. And sir, however, I also see that you were injured in Afghanistan. The reports mention an explosion at a forward operating base, casualties among medical personnel. His blue eyes studied her face carefully. What I don't see in these reports is a clear picture of what actually happened that day. Elena felt her chest tighten. Sir, I believe all relevant information is in the official incident report. Official reports often lack the human element, Sergeant. They tell us what happened, but not how it affected the people involved. Admiral Harrison leaned back in his chair. I served 3 tours in Afghanistan myself. I know that kind of experience leaves marks on a person. Some visible, some not. For a moment, Elena considered giving him the standard response she had perfected for military psychiatrists and medical boards. Everything was fine. She was recovered, ready for duty. But something in his manner, the way he spoke about Afghanistan with understanding rather than detached professionalism, made her hesitate. It was a coordinated attack, sir. They hit our perimeter first, drew our security forces to respond, then targeted the medical facilities. I was treating casualties from the first explosion when the second bomb went off. Elena's voice remained steady, but her hands clenched slightly in her lap. And you were injured in the second explosion? Yes, sir. Shrapnel and debris. I was lucky to survive. Admiral Harrison nodded slowly. Survivor's guilt is common in these situations, Sergeant. I've seen it many times. In others, and in myself. Elena looked up sharply. There was something in his tone that suggested personal experience, not just professional observation. For a moment, she saw past the rank and the ribbons to the man underneath, someone who understood the weight she carried. The intercom buzzed, interrupting the moment. Admiral, your 0830 appointment is here. He glanced at his watch. Time moves quickly. Sergeant Rodriguez, I want you to know that whatever the medical board decides, you have a place here, if you want it. Good medics are hard to find, and good people even harder. As Elena stood to leave, she felt something shift inside her. A small crack in the walls she had built around herself. Thank you, sir. That means more than you know. Walking back to the medical facility for her evaluation, Elena found herself thinking about the Admiral's words and the understanding she had seen in his eyes. For the first time since returning stateside, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, she might find a way to belong somewhere again. 2 weeks had passed since Elena's initial meeting with Admiral Harrison. The medical board had cleared her for limited duty, recommending a gradual return to full medical responsibilities. She had been assigned to the base medical facility under Dr. Collins, treating routine injuries and illnesses rather than combat trauma. It was a significant step down from her previous role as a forward combat medic, but Elena was grateful to be working again. The base had a rhythm that Elena was slowly learning to appreciate. Morning formations, regular meal times, scheduled activities, everything predictable and safe. She found herself gradually relaxing, sleeping better at night. Though the nightmares still came. Occasionally, Admiral Harrison had been a constant presence around the base, but their interactions had been limited to polite nods when they passed in the corridors. Elena had begun to wonder if their conversation in his office had been a one-time occurrence, a moment of understanding that wouldn't be repeated. That changed on a Thursday morning when a training exercise went wrong. Elena was in the medical facility reviewing patient files when the emergency alarm sounded. Within minutes, injured sailors began arriving. A helicopter training mission had experienced mechanical problems during landing, resulting in a hard crash that injured several crew members. Elena's medical training kicked in immediately. She moved efficiently between patients, triaging injuries and directing treatment. The familiar surge of adrenaline and focus felt good, reminding her why she had chosen to become a medic in the first place. The most seriously injured was a young pilot named Lieutenant Marcus Chen. He had suffered multiple rib fractures and internal bleeding when the helicopter's control panel collapsed during impact. As Elena worked to stabilize him, she could see the fear in his eyes, the same look she had seen too many times in wounded soldiers overseas. It's okay, Lieutenant. You're going to be fine. We need to get you to surgery, but the bleeding is under control now. Elena's voice was calm and reassuring as she worked. I can't feel my legs, Chen whispered, panic creeping into his voice. Elena quickly checked his reflexes and found normal responses. That's shock, not paralysis. Your spinal cord is intact. The feeling will come back as we get your blood pressure stabilized. Dr. Collins appeared beside her, assessed the situation quickly. Good work, Rodriguez. We need to get him to the OR immediately. Can you assist? Of course, ma'am. As they wheeled Lieutenant Chen toward surgery, Elena caught sight of Admiral Harrison standing near the entrance to the medical facility. He was watching the entire operation with intense focus, and when his eyes met hers, she saw something that surprised her. It was approval, maybe even admiration. The surgery took 4 hours. Elena assisted Dr. Collins throughout the procedure, her hands steady and sure as they repaired the damage to Chen's internal organs. When they finally finished, the young pilot's vital signs were stable and his prognosis was good. "Excellent work today, Rodriguez," Dr. Collins said as they cleaned up. "You showed exactly the kind of skill and composure we need in emergency situations. I'm recommending you for advancement to full medical duties." Elena felt a surge of pride and relief. After months of uncertainty about her future, she was finally feeling like herself again, like the competent medic she had trained to be. As she left the medical facility that evening, she was surprised to find Admiral Harrison waiting for her outside the building. He was out of uniform, wearing casual civilian clothes that made him seem more approachable, more human. "Sergeant Rodriguez, I heard about your work today." Dr. Collins was very impressed. "And where?" End quote. "Thank you, sir. Just doing my job. Would you join me for dinner? There's a small restaurant off base that serves decent food and offers some privacy for conversation." The invitation was unexpected, and Elena found herself studying his face for clues about his intentions. "Sir, I'm not sure that's appropriate. It's not a date, Sergeant. It's 2 military professionals having a meal and a conversation. But if you're uncomfortable with the idea, I understand." Elena considered the offer. There was something about Admiral Harrison that intrigued her, a depth that went beyond his military rank. "All right, sir. But I'll need to change clothes." "Of course. Shall we say 1,900 hours at Coastal Kitchen? It's about 10 minutes off base." An hour later, Elena found herself sitting across from Admiral Harrison in a small seafood restaurant overlooking the harbor. He had chosen a corner table away from other diners, and the setting felt intimate despite the public location. Elena had changed into a simple blue dress that made her dark hair shine under the restaurant's warm lighting. "You can call me James when we're off base and out of uniform," he said as they studied their menus. "Rank can be exhausting sometimes." "Elena," she replied, still feeling slightly awkward about the informality. They ordered their food and sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching boats move across the darkening water outside the window. James seemed different, away from the base, more relaxed and approachable. "You did something remarkable today," he said finally. "The way you handled Lieutenant Chen, your focus under pressure. That's not something that can be taught. It comes from experience and natural ability." "I've had a lot of practice," Elena replied quietly. "Afghanistan, among other places. 3 tours, multiple forward operating bases. You see enough trauma, and you either learn to handle it, or you break." James nodded. "I served with the 82nd Airborne in Afghanistan. 2 tours between 2010 and 2014. I know exactly what you mean." Elena looked at him with new understanding. "What was your role?" "Strategic planning mostly, but I spent time at forward bases coordinating operations. I saw what medics like you went through, the impossible situations you faced every day." His blue eyes grew distant. "I've always had tremendous respect for medical personnel in combat zones." Their food arrived, providing a natural break in the conversation. Elena found herself relaxing more as the evening progressed. James was intelligent and thoughtful, asking questions that showed genuine interest in her experiences and opinions. He told her about his own struggles, adjusting to garrison life after years in combat zones, the difficulty of finding purpose in peacetime military service. "Sometimes I wonder if I stayed in the service too long," he admitted. 22 years now. Most of my contemporaries have moved on to civilian careers, started families, built different kinds of lives. Do you regret it?" Elena asked. Not regret, exactly. But I sometimes wonder what else might have been possible. He paused, seeming to consider his words carefully. What about you? Do you plan to make the military a career? Elena considered the question. Until recently, she had been uncertain about her future, questioning whether she could continue serving effectively. I don't know. A few weeks ago, I would have said no. After what happened in Afghanistan, I wasn't sure I could do this job anymore. But today, working on Lieutenant Chen, I remembered why I became a medic in the first place. The desire to help people. Yes, but more than that. The ability to make a difference in the worst moments of someone's life. To be the person they depend on when everything else has gone wrong. James studied her face in the restaurant's soft lighting. That's a heavy burden to carry. Sometimes. But it's also a privilege. They finished dinner, and James insisted on walking her back to her car. The evening air was warm and filled with the sound of water against the nearby shore. As they reached her vehicle, Elena felt reluctant for the evening to end. Thank you for dinner, she said. And for the conversation. It's been a long time since I talked to someone who understands. The understanding goes both ways, James replied. Perhaps we could do this again sometime. Elena nodded. I'd like that. As she drove back to the base, Elena found herself smiling for the first time in months. The evening had been unexpected and pleasant. But more than that, it had given her a sense of connection she hadn't realized she was missing. Over the following weeks, Elena and James began meeting regularly for dinner or coffee. Always off base, always in civilian clothes, maintaining the fiction that they were simply two people getting to know each other, rather than a base commander and a subordinate exploring mutual attraction. Elena found herself looking forward to their conversations. James was well-read and thoughtful, interested in everything from military history to literature to current events. He had traveled extensively during his military career and had fascinating stories about the places he had seen and the people he had met. More importantly, he understood the weight that combat veterans carried. When Elena had nightmares that left her tired and distracted the next day, James could see it in her face without her having to explain. When loud noises made her flinch involuntarily, he simply moved their conversation to a quieter location without making a big deal about it. Hypervigilance is normal, he told her one evening as they sat on a bench overlooking the harbor. It kept us alive over there. But it's harder to turn off than we expect when we come home. Do you still have trouble with it? Elena asked. Sometimes. Crowded places can be overwhelming. Sudden movements still catch my attention, more than they should. But it gets easier with time and practice. Elena appreciated his honesty. Most people, even other veterans, tried to project strength and complete recovery. James was willing to admit that healing was an ongoing process, not a destination. Their relationship remained strictly professional on base. James continued to be the demanding but fair commander that his reputation suggested. And Elena threw herself into her medical duties with renewed energy and focus. Dr. Collins had been pleased with her progress and had recommended her for promotion to staff sergeant. But Elena knew that their off-duty relationship was becoming something more than friendship. There was an attraction between them that grew stronger each time they met. James was careful to maintain appropriate boundaries. But Elena could see the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. The situation came to a head on a rainy Friday evening. They had planned to meet for dinner, but the restaurant they had chosen was closed due to a power outage. Instead, they ended up at James's house, a modest home about 15 minutes from the base. I could make dinner, he offered, as they stood in his living room, both soaked from the unexpected downpour. Nothing fancy, but I have the ingredients for pasta. Elena looked around the house, noting the military memorabilia mixed with comfortable furniture and well-worn books. It felt lived in and welcoming, a reflection of the man she was coming to know. That sounds good. As James cooked, Elena helped by setting the table and opening a bottle of wine he had selected. The domestic scene felt natural and right, in a way that surprised her. She had spent so many years focused on her military career that she had never seriously considered what a normal relationship might look like. During dinner, their conversation turned more personal than usual. James told her about growing up in North Carolina, the son of a Navy pilot who had inspired his own military service. Elena shared stories about her childhood in Texas, her decision to join the military after college, her hopes of using her medical training to make a difference in the world. After dinner, they moved to the living room, where a fire was crackling in the fireplace. The wine, and the warmth, and the intimacy of the setting created an atmosphere that was both comfortable and charged with possibility. "Elena," James said quietly, "I need to be honest about something." She looked at him expectantly, noting the serious expression on his face. "This thing between us, whatever it is, it's getting complicated. I'm your commanding officer, and there are regulations about personal relationships between officers of different ranks." Elena had been thinking the same thing. Military fraternization policies were strict and could result in court-martial for both of them if their relationship became romantic. "I know. I've been thinking about that too. The responsible thing would be to stop this now, before it goes any further." "Is that what you want?" Elena asked. James looked into the fire for a long moment before answering. "No. What I want is to get to know you better, to see where this connection between us might lead. But I also don't want to put your career at risk." Elena moved closer to him on the couch, close enough that she could see the conflict in his blue eyes. "James, I appreciate your concern for my career, but I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions. I've spent months being afraid. Afraid that I couldn't do my job anymore. Afraid that I'd never feel normal again. For the first time since Afghanistan, I feel like myself. A big part of that is because of you." James reached out and gently touched her face, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. "Elena, you don't understand what you're saying. If this relationship became known, it could end both our careers. Then we'll have to be careful," she whispered, leaning into his touch. The kiss that followed was gentle at first, tentative, as if they were both afraid of crossing a line they couldn't uncross. But as Elena responded, James deepened the kiss, his arms pulling her closer. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing heavily. "Are you sure about this?" James asked. Instead of answering with words, Elena kissed him again. This time, there was nothing tentative about it. Years of loneliness and isolation seemed to melt away as she felt herself responding to his touch, to the warmth and strength of his embrace. When they finally separated, Elena rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. For the first time in years, she felt completely safe, completely at peace. "We'll figure out the complications," she murmured. "Right now, this feels right." James held her close, his hand stroking her hair. "Yes, it does." Outside, the rain continued to fall. But inside James's house, Elena felt like she had finally found a place where she belonged. The scars she carried, both visible and invisible, seemed less important in the warmth of his arms. For tonight, at least, she could imagine a future that included happiness, love, and healing. 3 months had passed since that rainy evening at James's house. Elena and James had managed to maintain their relationship in secret, meeting off base and communicating through personal phones and email accounts. Their professional interactions remained strictly formal, giving no hint of the intimacy they shared away from prying eyes. Elena had flourished under the stability of their relationship. Her confidence as a medic had returned completely, and she was now being considered for a position as head of emergency medical services for the base. The nightmares had become less frequent, and she felt more like her old self than she had since before Afghanistan. But keeping their relationship secret was becoming increasingly difficult. Elena found herself wanting to share her happiness with Sarah, to have someone to talk to about the man who had become such an important part of her life. The secrecy felt like a weight, adding stress to what should have been a joyful time. The situation became more complicated when Admiral Harrison's ex-wife visited the base unexpectedly. Catherine Harrison was an elegant woman in her early 40s who had remarried a successful businessman after her divorce from James 5 years earlier. She arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, claiming she needed to discuss their daughter's college expenses. Elena learned about the visit from Sarah, who had seen Catherine in the administrative building. "She's still beautiful," Sarah commented over lunch. "I heard their divorce was amicable. Something about growing apart after his last deployment. They have a daughter who's starting her sophomore year at Duke University." The news hit Elena like a physical blow. James had never mentioned having a daughter. In all their conversations about family, childhood, and future plans, he had never once brought up having a child. Elena felt betrayed and confused, wondering what other important details about his life he had kept from her. That evening, she waited for James at their usual meeting spot, a small coffee shop 20 minutes from the base. When he arrived, she could see immediately that something was wrong. His face was tense, and he looked tired. "We need to talk," Elena said before he could even sit down. "I know. Catherine told me she saw you on base today. She asked questions about you that I couldn't answer without raising suspicions. That's not what I want to talk about, James. I want to know why you never told me you have a daughter." James froze halfway into his chair, the color draining from his face. "How did you find out about Rebecca? Does it matter? The point is that you've been lying to me by omission for months. We've talked about everything. Our pasts, our families, our dreams for the future. How could you not mention having a child?" James sat down heavily, running his hands through his hair. "It's complicated, Elena. Rebecca and we don't have a close relationship. The divorce, my deployments, the demands of military life. I wasn't the father I should have been. That doesn't explain why you hid her existence from me." "Because I was ashamed," James said quietly. "My marriage fell apart because I chose my career over my family. Catherine tried for years to make it work, but I was never really present, even when I was physically there. Rebecca was 12 when we divorced. She blamed me for breaking up our family, and she was right to blame me." Elena studied his face, seeing pain she had never noticed before. "When was the last time you spoke to her?" "Why?" "Leave. Christmas. A brief phone call that lasted maybe 10 minutes. She's polite, but distant. I send money for school and try to stay involved in her life, but she's made it clear that she doesn't need me." "So you decided that made it okay to pretend she doesn't exist when you're with me?" James looked up sharply. "That's not what I was doing. I was trying to protect what we have. Every relationship I've ever had has ended when women realize that my career comes first, that I'm not good at balancing personal life with professional responsibilities. I didn't want to lose you too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in Tong." Elena felt her anger softening slightly, but the betrayal still stung. "You should have trusted me enough to tell me the truth. If we're going to have a real relationship, we can't have secrets like this between us. You're right. I'm sorry, Elena. I should have told you about Rebecca from the beginning." James reached across the table and took her hand. "What can I do to make this right?" Elena pulled her hand away. "I need some time to think. This changes things, James. It makes me question what else you might be keeping from me." That night, Elena lay awake in her quarters, staring at the ceiling and trying to process her feelings. She cared about James deeply, possibly loved him, but the revelation about his daughter had shaken her trust. More troubling was the realization that his pattern of putting career before family might eventually affect their relationship too. The next morning brought a new crisis that pushed personal concerns to the background. A major storm system was approaching the coast, and the base was preparing for possible hurricane conditions. Elena was assigned to emergency preparedness duties, ensuring the medical facility was ready to handle potential casualties from the storm. As she worked through her checklist, securing equipment and reviewing emergency protocols, Elena found herself thinking about James's words from the night before. The demands of military life really were intense, requiring sacrifices that civilian careers rarely demanded. She had seen marriages crumble under the pressure, watched good officers burn out from trying to balance impossible expectations, The storm hit late that afternoon with unexpected fury. Wind speeds exceeded predictions, and several buildings on the base suffered damage. Elena found herself working through the night, treating injuries from flying debris and helping coordinate medical response efforts. Around 2 in the morning, as the worst of the storm was passing, Elena was called to treat a civilian contractor who had been injured while securing communications equipment on a roof. The man had fallen and suffered multiple injuries, including possible internal bleeding. As Elena worked to stabilize the patient, she became aware of someone standing behind her. Without looking up, she knew it was James. She could sense his presence in a way that had become familiar over the months they had been together. "How bad is it?" he asked Dr. Collins. "Stable for now, but he needs surgery. The problem is that the storm has knocked out power to the main operating room. We're running on backup generators that may not be reliable enough for a complex procedure." Elena looked up from her patient. "Sir, there's a portable surgical unit in storage that we could set up in the conference room. It was designed for field conditions and would be perfect for this situation." Dr. Collins frowned. "That equipment hasn't been used in years. Do we even know if it's functional?" "I can check it, ma'am. I trained on similar units overseas." James stepped forward. "Do whatever you need to do, Sergeant Rodriguez. I'll make sure you have whatever resources are required." For the next hour, Elena worked with a team of medical technicians to set up the portable surgical unit. The equipment was older than what she had used in Afghanistan, but the basic principles were the same. As she tested each component, muscle memory from her combat deployments took over. "This is impressive work, Rodriguez," Dr. Collins commented as Elena finished the setup. "Where did you learn to work with portable surgical equipment?" 1. Forward operating bases, ma'am. When you don't have access to fixed facilities, you learn to improvise. The surgery took 3 hours and was completely successful. The patient's injuries were repaired, and his vital signs remained stable throughout the procedure. As Elena cleaned up afterward, she felt the familiar satisfaction that came from using her skills to save a life. James appeared as she was finishing her post-operative notes. "Outstanding work tonight, Sergeant. Doctor Collins tells me the patient wouldn't have survived without your quick thinking and technical expertise. Thank you, sir." Elena maintained professional formality, since they were still on base, and other personnel were nearby. "Could I see you in my office when you're finished here? There are some matters we need to discuss." Elena nodded, wondering if he wanted to continue their personal conversation from the night before, or if this was purely professional business. 20 minutes later, she knocked on his office door. James was alone, sitting behind his desk with her personnel file open in front of him. "Close the door and have a seat," he said quietly. Elena complied, noting the serious expression on his face. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and about what happened tonight," James began. "Watching you work under pressure, seeing your skills and dedication, it reminded me of something important." Elena waited for him to continue. "You're an exceptional medic, Elena. More than that, you're an exceptional soldier. What you did tonight, setting up that surgical unit under emergency conditions, that's the kind of leadership and expertise that the military needs to recognize and promote. Sir, I'm recommending you for officer candidate school. With your experience and abilities, you should be an officer, not an enlisted soldier. It would mean a significant change in your career path, and it would solve one of the problems facing our relationship." Elena stared at him in surprise. "You want me to become an officer because it would make it easier for us to date?" "No," James said firmly. "I want you to become an officer because you deserve it, and because the military needs leaders like you. The fact that it would also eliminate the fraternization issue between us is a secondary benefit." Elena considered his words carefully. Officer candidate school would indeed change everything about her military career. It would mean months of intensive training, followed by a commission as a second lieutenant and assignment to a leadership role. It was an opportunity she had never seriously considered, but one that could open doors she hadn't known existed. "What if I don't want to be an officer?" she asked. What if I'm happy being a medic? Officers can be medics too. Medical Corps officers have opportunities for advanced training, specialized assignments, leadership roles that would let you make a bigger impact on military medicine. And if I say no to OCS? James was quiet for a moment. Then we would have to end our personal relationship. I won't ask you to compromise your career for me, and I won't compromise mine either. The regulations exist for good reasons, and we can't ignore them indefinitely. Elena felt a spike of anger. So I have to choose between my career as I've planned it and our relationship? Elena, that's not how I meant it. But it's what you're saying. Change your life plans to fit what I need, or lose me. James stood up and moved around the desk. But Elena held up a hand to stop him from coming closer. You know what, James? This conversation proves that you really do put your career first. Your daughter was right to blame you for your failed marriage. You're doing the exact same thing to me that you did to your family. That's not fair, Elena. I'm trying to find a solution that works for both of us. No, you're trying to find a solution that works for you. OCS might be a great opportunity, but it should be my choice, not something I'm pressured into to save our relationship. Elena turned toward the door, then stopped and looked back at him. And James? If you had told me about Rebecca from the beginning, if you had been honest about your priorities and your history, maybe I could have made an informed decision about whether to get involved with you. Instead, I'm finding out who you really are piece by piece, and I don't like what I'm discovering. As Elena left his office, she felt the familiar weight of disappointment settling on her shoulders. For months, James had represented hope and healing and the possibility of happiness. Now she saw him more clearly as a man who had good intentions, but whose actions consistently prioritized his own needs and career above the people who mattered to him. The next morning, Elena requested a meeting with Dr. Collins to discuss a transfer to another base. She had been at Charleston for 4 months now, long enough to recover her confidence and skills. It was time to move on, to find a place where she could focus on her medical career without the complications of a failed relationship with her commanding officer. Dr. Collins was surprised by the request. Rodriguez, you've been doing excellent work here. Your performance during last night's emergency was exemplary. Are you sure you want to leave? Yes, ma'am. I think it's time for a change of scenery. Is this about Admiral Harrison? I've noticed that he seems to take a special interest in your career. Elena kept her expression neutral. No, ma'am. It's simply time for me to move on to new challenges. Dr. Collins studied her face for a moment, then nodded. I'll make some calls. With your skills and experience, I'm sure we can find you an excellent assignment. What type of posting are you interested in? Something overseas, ma'am. Maybe Germany or Japan. Somewhere I can use my trauma medicine experience. As Elena left Dr. Collins's office, she felt a mixture of sadness and relief. Leaving Charleston would mean ending her relationship with James, but it would also give her the space she needed to rebuild her life on her own terms. That afternoon, she received a text message from James asking to meet her that evening. Elena ignored it. She had said everything she needed to say, and she wasn't interested in hearing more promises or explanations that would only complicate her decision to leave. 3 days later, Elena was packing her belongings when someone knocked on her door. She opened it to find James standing in the hallway, out of uniform, and looking haggard. Please, Elena, give me 5 minutes to explain. James, there's nothing left to say. I'm being transferred to Ramstein Air Base in Germany next week. It's what's best for both of us. No, it's not. James stepped inside her room uninvited. Elena, I made mistakes. I should have told you about Rebecca, and I should have handled the OCS recommendation differently. But please don't let my mistakes destroy what we have together. Elena continued folding clothes and placing them in her suitcase. What we have is based on lies and half-truths. That's not a foundation for a real relationship. James reached out and gently touched her arm, stopping her packing. Look at me. Please. Reluctantly, Elena turned to face him. I love you, he said simply. I know I haven't said that before, and I know I've done things wrong, but I love you, and I don't want to lose you. Elena felt tears threatening, but she forced herself to remain calm. Love isn't enough, James. Love without honesty and respect is just another kind of manipulation. Then give me a chance to prove that I can do better. Don't take the transfer to Germany. Stay here, and let me show you that our relationship can work. Elena shook her head. I can't do that. James, you're a good man with good intentions, but you've shown me that when push comes to shove, you'll make decisions based on what's convenient for your career. I won't be the person who gets hurt every time you choose your job over our relationship. James was quiet for a long moment, then nodded sadly. I can't argue with that. You deserve better than what I've given you. Yes, I do. As James turned to leave, Elena felt a sudden impulse to call him back, to find a way to make things work between them. But she knew that would only lead to more heartbreak down the road. Some relationships weren't meant to survive, no matter how strong the initial connection might have been. A week later, Elena boarded a transport plane bound for Germany. As the aircraft lifted off from Charleston, she looked down at the base where she had spent 4 pivotal months of her life. She had arrived broken and uncertain about her future. She was leaving stronger and more confident, with a clear sense of her own worth and what she wanted from life. The scars on her ribs still ached sometimes when the weather changed, a permanent reminder of her time in Afghanistan. But those scars no longer defined her. They were simply part of her story, proof that she had survived something terrible and emerged intact. As the plane climbed higher and the South Carolina coast disappeared beneath the clouds, Elena closed her eyes and allowed herself to imagine what her new assignment might bring. There would be new challenges, new opportunities to use her skills as a medic, new people to meet and learn from. For the first time since Afghanistan, Elena felt truly excited about her future. She had learned that she was strong enough to walk away from something that wasn't right for her, even when it meant walking away from love. That knowledge gave her confidence that she could handle whatever came next. The story of Elena Rodriguez was far from over. In fact, she suspected that the best chapters were still to be written.